If you change multiple variables, you can't measure because you don't know which one made the difference. That's why you change one, you measure, and then you either have validated your assumption, now you have found something that works, do more of that, or you have invalidated your assumption, doesn't work. We were on the wrong path. We think it works, but market is the number one coach.
You're listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author Sarah Box. We focus on the mantra, no labels, no limits, no excuses. And now without further ado, please welcome your commanding coach with plenty of chutzpah and heart, Sarah Box.
Hey there, No Labels, No Limits podcast listener. I'm Sarah Box, your host of the No Labels, No Limits podcast, where we are on a mission to help individuals, teams, and organizations, especially our nonprofit friends, think outside the box, move beyond limiting beliefs, and create a profound impact in their own lives, the lives of their communities, and of their team members. And we do this, as you know, by sharing accomplished and inspiring guests who have challenged limiting beliefs and labels to pursue and accomplish personal and professional goals. So today's guest is a little bit different. He's coming to us from the other side of the world, Simon Severino, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. He can easily be described as a dynamic force in the world of sales, leadership, and prospecting, and he is recognized as a LinkedIn top voice. Formerly a psychologist turned CEO, Simon discovered the crucial balance of working on the business, not just in the business. Listen to that one because it's a big pivot point for most of us. So now through his innovative strategy sprints method, he empowers business owners to revolutionize their sales strategies, reclaiming a remarkable 14 hours a week. Think about 14 hours a week. It's big. So he is the author of Strategy Sprints and, as I mentioned, a renowned leader through whose insights he's graced TEDx stages and Forbes columns with over 1,300 podcast episodes. That's amazing in and of itself. And he shares his expertise through diving through the intricacies of supercharging sales. Beyond work, though, because we all have a life beyond work, Simon is a dedicated triathlete who savors every moment swimming, biking, and running. He's also a master at engaging his 3 children in outdoor activities, blending family time with his curiosity and shrinky questioning style. So join us now as we welcome Simon Severino to the No Labels, No Limits podcast. Hey, Simon, how are you?
Hey, Sarah, thanks for the nice introduction. And hey, everyone.
So, Simon, you are an expert in sales. But before we dive into sales, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs, they kind of cringe sales. I don't want to do sales. I'm nervous about sales. But we're all doing sales. Can you reframe for us really sales and how important that is to how we show up?
Yeah, let's stop doing sales. Nobody needs sales. What people need is being heard, being understood, being seen, having a partner that's trustworthy, that you can ask questions and that can help you take better decisions, right? That's what we need. Nobody needs sales. So a good salesperson is actually not a salesperson. It's a good conversation partner that has deep expertise and experience in a particular field, so that they can actually listen well and help us take the right decisions.
Perfect. And we all feel more comfortable working with someone who feels like a partner to us. Yeah.
It's all about collaborative progress.
I wanted to ask you, so going back to when you were a practicing psychologist, and you may still be, but what themes or what themes from there have transitioned over most as you're helping business owners move their mindsets and work forward to achieve their business goals and objectives?
Yeah, what's funny? I moved from, the clinical world, from healing people to coaching people. And I thought, wow, that's a big jump, completely different world, completely different skill set. Just to find out on the other side of things, on the business side of things, that the number one skill of any salesperson and of any sales coach is listening. So I was back to square one. This is what you learn as a psychotherapist, how to listen.
So how has that, well, I don't want to go into that quite yet, but I want to talk a little bit about your book first, because it has some golden nuggets in it. But you talk about the power of strategic thinking. So, and that ties to your sprints, your strategic sprints, correct?
Yes. So our strategy sprint is 90 days. In those 90 days, we want to effectively double revenue. But how to get there? We have to solve three things by 25%: sales time, pricing power, win rate. And how do you actually do that? There are some techniques, but really it's a journey of 90 days from you kind of winging it, picking up the phone, sometimes getting some referrals, but it's all not active, repeatable sales. It's just, the gifts of the universe. Okay, they come, I take them. But they come in different cycles. So sometimes there's nothing for 2 months. And sometimes I don't have time to actively follow up on people, call people, start conversations, pick up conversations again. So it's kind of winging it. And when you run a business, it's so hard. There are so many moving parts. If you have a part, the three core parts of running a business are marketing, sales, and operations. So marketing, how do I start a conversation with a stranger? Sales, how do I intensify that conversation into commitment to actually progress together in a collaborative way? And then operations, now how do I deliver an amazing experience that's so good that they will stick around longer and bring their friends? Those are the three core parts of a business. And each part is made of 100 moving parts, super hard to get right. And if you don't have a repeatable marketing process, a repeatable sales process, a repeatable operations, it's quite stressful. That's why many businesses, they give up too early, they burn out, they go out of business. So it's really important to pick those three one by one and to systemize them. And we have specialized into systemizing the sales part.
So when you pick one of those, I'm glad you said that, because I was going to say the tendency is to want to hit all of them at once. It's like, okay, I've got to get everything perfect and going on it at once. But that's not your approach.
Mm-hmm. Solve one bottleneck first. So usually you are, there is one of those three parts that is the bottleneck. The bottleneck is, if you improve that by 20%, the overall output of the overall value chain gets higher by 80%. How do you know the bottleneck? It's the weakest part. There is a set of questions that you can ask yourself to find your bottleneck. One of them is, if I add 5 times more clients than usual next week, which part of my business breaks first? And now you know where the bottleneck is. And also inside of a 12-week sprint, each week solves one bottleneck. So let's say the team says, which is a typical sprint start is, Simon, we want to improve lead generation, so getting more leads in. We want to have more engagement on LinkedIn, and we want to have better emails that actually make money when we send our newsletter. Not just entertainment, it should make chiging. So if those are the 3 goals for 90 days, we will pick one part for 7 days and optimize that. For example, if you want to improve your emails, first you have to understand the buyer's journey. So week 1, ideal client profile definition and buyer journey. When that is done, then we move to week 2, core messaging and beliefs. 3 beliefs that you have to install. Without those 3 beliefs, they will never buy from you, so you shouldn't have them on the phone. So those emails, 3 beliefs, 3 emails per belief, 9 emails, that's this week's work. When that is done, we measure if it works. If it works, next week we move on to the next thing, the call to action. What happens after the email? Then we solve that. We move to the calendar. Now they have booked themselves on your calendar. What are your talking points in the sales conversation itself? So you see, each week solves one bottleneck instead of attacking everything at once, which is just too dispersed.
And you don't really make progress when you do that because it's just hit or miss. You can't find a pattern and see if it's actually what caused the change or fall off, right?
Exactly. The strategy sprint really follows the scientific method. You change one variable and then you measure. If you change multiple variables, you can't measure because you don't know which one made the difference. That's why you change one, you measure, and then you either have validated your assumption, now you have found something that works, do more of that, or you have invalidated your assumption, doesn't work. We were on the wrong path. We think it works, but market is the number one coach. If you send an email, the open rate and the click rate tell you if it works, not if you like the email.
So we get people to open your email, but really you're wanting them to convert, right? To have some higher engagement with you. So do you find your clients have trouble making that jump from getting the email out to actually getting on the sales call or making the conversion or the call to action?
The first obstacle that we observe is they are doing too much. So for example, I ask them, hey guys, okay, let's improve the emails. And they go, oh yeah, but when should I do that? I don't have time this week. So the first thing that we ask them to do is to map all their activities, and then they write down what they are doing. They're doing a ton of stuff because the default mindset is frequently the more the better, right? The more activities, the more I hustle, the more, and it's partially true, but there is a tipping point. Actually, after 3-4 hours per day, if you are not doing the right things, it doesn't really compound. So it's important to hit the right things 3-4 hours a day. And sometimes they're doing the wrong things. So we help them map out everything. And then we say, guys, can we select the few things out of this list that actually move the needle forward? So we will select for things that increase their pricing power, increase their win rate, and shorten their sales time. Those activities get prioritized for those 90 days. Now, this is where the 14 hours per week come from, because now you are only focusing on high leverage activities and you're putting on hold for 90 days all the other things that feel so important and so urgent. And so after a couple of weeks, teams go, oh, that wasn't even so important. It was just urgent. So we focus on those few activities. And that is one moment of, calming the team, getting clarity in, and really laser focusing them on one thing. Then we solve that, we move to the next.
So can we talk a little bit more about those three areas? Because I think that's very important. My experience with folks when I work with them strategically is the reluctance to let go of everything that's happening for fear that it will have a devastating impact or they won't be able to pick it back up if they choose to. So what advice can you give us around that about being willing to let go, even if it's for a season?
Oh yeah, this is the master class. Right. And so I certify coaches in the strategy sprints method, and of the 60 days daily supervision that I have with them, 40 days are about the actual techniques to improve sales. 20 days are how to get the other side to do it. Because that's important. If you don't have their buy-in, they're not going to execute. So this is where psychology becomes important, because the master class in being a coach is really to understand where they are right now, where is their comfort zone, where is their learning zone and their stretch zone, and getting them out of their comfort zone, but They will only do it if you speak their language. And what is their language? If they run a business, the language is usually the client work. They care about their clients. So start there. Start from the delivery. How is the payment going? How is the contract set up? If you start somewhere else, they will boycott. So follow the money. You start with the client work, their chigging, because that's what they care about, that their client work is successful. And from there, you work backwards. Okay, the payment method, the statement of work, the sales call itself, how to get more sales calls, filling the pipeline, how to fill the pipeline. Okay, let's talk email, let's talk LinkedIn.
But all in service of the client from that context that you just described, correct?
You lose them if you start anywhere else, and you get them, and you are their partner if you follow their money flow, because now they will always feel that this is important right now. It's important enough that for 1 hour, I will let go of whatever is going on.
And then so I guess what I'm trying to drill down a little bit is, say I'm your client and we've had a conversation and it's clear to me that, okay, I need to let this go. I don't know if I'm letting it go forever or for a season or only for that 90-day sprint, but what is the risk or the reward for me for doing that? Because I also find people, it's like, I'm willing to do it if I don't have to have any pain or know that I'm going to damage my company or my team. I think those are some of the real things people bring up.
Absolutely. So for example, I have to rename my brand. What if it doesn't work? Or, I have to cut this newsletter because it doesn't work. So the brand is harder. The newsletter is easier because you can do an A/B test, and so the sprint coach will say, okay, let's run both. We send A to 500 people, we send B to 500 people tomorrow. We know the answer. We will let go of the loser email, the one with the lower click rate. That's easy, right? Because you can let go when you see the winner, you go with the winner.
Yeah, there's some metrics behind it.
Exactly. Harder with something like, I should rebrand. That's not measurable. So this is where fear comes in. What if I take the wrong decision? I can't measure the brand and brand strength before I do it. And so this is harder. And this is why we build supportive templates. So there is a framework, there's a process that picks them up. In the example of the branding, there's a 5 steps positioning work, a 5 steps messaging work, and we go step by step through that, and they build upon each other. So in each moment, it's a little change, and it's not all at once, but it's asking you to decide this. Okay, I will decide this. Then you decide the slogan. Then you design the angle. Then you design the voice. Then you design the message. And you are taking multiple small decisions, and you're feeling safe because there is a process that feels battle tested and solid. And so you're taking small decisions, small, which is different than I'm asking you to change something enormous at once. Nobody likes that.
No. Okay. I think I get it. Now, first, let me ask you, is that in your book, all of this process in your book, or the flow of this thinking in there?
Yes. Many of these checklists and processes are in the book. The book is called Strategy Sprints. It's on Amazon. It's coming out in Chinese this summer. That's going to be fun. Yeah. And then also on our website, strategysprints.com, many of these tools and checklists, they're open source. People can download them, use them.
Well, and we'll make sure we'll have all of that in the show notes so folks can grab it. So don't worry, especially if you're driving, you don't need to be taking notes. It'll be in the show notes because it is handy to have tools. But I think the context for the tools, as you're describing, like the rationale for them and when to apply them, are super important. And it sounds like the book lays all of that out as well. Like, you do this at this point for this reason. So I am curious. So you talk about how you've helped business owners or leaders get back 14 hours a week. How does that happen?
Yeah. So one element is to go through all the activities that they're doing and then really double checking, which of those activities do really move the needle forward for you? That's the first question. And then we just prioritize the ones that increase win rate, increase pricing power, increase sales velocity. The next question will be, do those activities that you have selected now actually build upon each other? Because sometimes you can have the right things, but they're not building upon each other. For example, the Acquired podcast, wonderful podcast. They started out, had 200 episodes, and they wanted to monetize those episodes via Twitter. Turned out, those things don't build upon each other. They don't compound. And because they asked themselves this question, they were able to localize that. Then they said, wait a moment, what if instead of using Twitter, we use our email list? So episode to email list. And that worked immediately in the first week. So they said, wait, this is directly compounding. And that was the moment when I said, okay, we will let go of Twitter. We'll use it for fun, but the core activities will be recording the episode and then sending it to the email list. That's the direct path. And then they optimized just that. It led to an incredible growth for that particular podcast. And it's a financial podcast. And now they landed the biggest bank in the universe as a sponsor. So they really crushed it. Now they have credibility, they have brand strength, they have optionality. They can now go to everybody else and say, hey, I have JP Morgan as a sponsor. Do you want to be sponsor number 2? That's pricing power, pure pricing power.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's part of how they got their 14 hours back, because they're not doing a bunch of extraneous work.
Yeah.
Am I understanding the link between what you shared and that piece there? Because that also is a huge revenue return.
Well, revenue tells you that something's working. It's an indicator, right? And when you find things that work, then the next question is, do they build upon each other? Because you might do something that works on Twitter, but it doesn't really monetize. And then you do the same thing via email and it monetizes. Now, if you just focus on email, now these activities will compound. And then from there, you can still reuse them as a blog and on LinkedIn and wherever you want. But you start by doing the one thing that directly compounds, and then you reuse it is very different. It's focused activity, and you can add layers of effort and freelancers and staff as it compounds. Yeah, you can build on that. But that's the difference. If you start in a focused way with something that compounds directly and then build on that, that's a stress-free building.
You know, in the beginning, you mentioned something about having clients have a great experience. And you've also mentioned previously about you really want your clients to have a wow experience. So from your perspective, what is a wow experience with you and your team?
This is the question of all questions. What is a wow? With us, the wow experience is that in 90 days, you double revenue. But there is a book on this. It's by Chip Heath and Dan Heath, and it's called The Power of Moments. It's really good for every business owner out there, even if you're a solopreneur, because they dissect what makes an experience wow, what makes it memorable. So they go through examples like you go to Disneyland, you come back, what is it that you remember about that? And then they dissect how Disney actually creates that experience. And you know, people who take this seriously, like Disney, Netflix, they take these things really seriously, and they are great examples in the book on how you create wow experience for your clients. It's totally unique to everybody listening, but thinking about it, and having the intention, that alone is probably already one step ahead of your competition who's just trying to deliver this week's work, instead of having also that step of thinking about the business and how can we improve the flow of what we do.
I don't know. I'm blanking on the name of the book initially, but they wrote a really good book together on like what makes it stick, right? What's sticky for people and how does it anchor for each of us. They have a really great way of explaining things that's digestible. So now I will check out this book from them. What else are you reading right now?
I am reading, let's see. So I'm reading Marcus. I was born in Rome, so my cultural heritage is the Romans. I'm reading Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. Wonderful. It's a journal. He runs this Roman Empire, and he sits in the Colosseum. They do all kinds of games for him that he doesn't care about. And he just writes down. So it's of music and games and fights, etc. And he absolutely doesn't care. He sits there in the middle of it and he's just writing into his journal. And he thinks about himself. He isn't writing for anybody. He's just a guy with a lot of pressure. Can you imagine you're running the Roman Empire? Everybody wants to kill you. So people slaughtering his folks. A lot of pressure. Basically like running a business.
Without the death threat constantly.
Well, it's for some people it's existential. Their family depends on their business success. So True. It feels vital for many of us. And he just is journaling because he needs a place to find sanity and clarity, to divide signal from noise. And so he's just journaling for himself. And afterward, it became a book, which is so enjoyable and so clear and so contemporary.
I was going to say it's timeless.
It's timeless.
Yeah. When you emphasize the that kind of experience, but the reflection part, like that's a very reflective book, because he's reflecting. And he's not always easy on himself, but he's always curious. So what is something that, like, after reading that sparked for you that you had an aha moment?
Oh, so many. In every second page, I'm going, oh my God, this is my life. So don't have a particular moment right now, but I resonate deeply with there is so much going on. What is the really important part of it? What is the part that if I do this right, everything else will fall into place? And he thinks a lot about what's noise, what's just not important. And he goes by elimination. I like that process. And the way I do it, I have a so-called daily flow. People can download it on strategysprints.com. The daily flow is a little template where I write down, this is how I did allocate my time today. So 8 a.m. I did this, 9 a.m. I did this, 10 a.m. I did this. And then when I close my day, which literally I close the computer for the day and then I call it a day, there is 2 reflective questions on that daily flow. Simon, of all the activities that you did, which one will you delegate tomorrow? And Simon, if you would live more freely and more intentionally, what will you be doing tomorrow? One question helps me let go of something, hand it over. The other one reminds me of the bigger dream. Not just I have to answer 20 emails, but hey, Simon, what's your why? Right? What's the bigger thing here? And both questions are so simple but so important. And since I do this every day with the daily flow, it keeps me come back to, okay, what's the next thing that I will delegate? And hey, what's the actual big thing? So you would never write a book if you don't ask yourself this question, right? Because nobody is expecting something in 2 days, which is a book. It's half a year journey. Nobody is asking for that in the first place. You only write it if you feel compelled to write it. And you only feel compelled if it's part of your bigger why.
I'm curious, you've got kids. What are their age ranges? Like, what's the span of ages?
2, 5, 8.
Okay. So for your 8-year-old or even your 5-year-old, I guess, what have they learned from you and how you approach life?
Oh, I'm learning from them. So from Olympia, the 2-year-old, I'm learning every day how to be in the moment. She's in the moment. She's dancing, she's singing, she sees a little insect. She goes, "What? Insect?" For her, happiness is just being in front of the house and meeting a dog. She's happy. Bliss. So what I'm learning from her is to get outside of the house a couple times a day and to let things happen. The dog, and then somebody talks to us and we meet new people. Those little things, they are big things for her. So I'm learning how the little things can be big things. And from the boys, actually something very similar. We are now watching, in the evening, we have this story time, and I either invent a story, like I make something up, which is fun, or we watch Netflix. And recently we were watching it's called Archibald's Next Big Thing. And I think the producer really thought deeply about it. It's a chicken that doesn't think about tomorrow and enjoys every single day. So you see, I am learning from them, really. Maybe in 20 years, they ask me some questions, they will learn something from me. We'll see. Right now, they're my teacher.
I think those are very grounding lessons, and I don't know if you experience this with the folks you work with, but there is a rising level of, or it has been rising. I think people are more conscious of it, but just that stress to make sure everything's okay and you're balancing this and doing that work is successful, your relationships are successful. But honestly, when you can go out and be happy because you saw a dog or a bug or you felt the sun on you, I mean, even for 5 minutes, it really changes your physical and physiological state and mental state. So I think those are the big lessons in life, and then work can fit around it. And it's so fun to watch little kids, because like you're saying, when you talk about Olympia, you're describing her, I can see her eyes just like going, "Come on, Dad, let's do this." So I like learning from kids.
Yes. So. And in the sprint, we have something similar. So those 12 weeks, each week ends with a sprint dashboard, which means 3 metrics that will be celebrated. And it's small things that we will make big. So the team has to pick one marketing number, one sales number, one operations number of that, and that will be measured every 7 days. So in that week, we will say, okay, what's the sales number? Oh, this week we have sold 1.2% more than last week. That's a small thing, but we will make it big. We will congratulate, we'll write a leaderboard, I have songs, I have confettis, I have some visuals, we will celebrate it. So the small 1.2% improvement in sales will make it big. And if you do this 12 times, you build a habit of acknowledging the little things, of having the vocabulary, the skills, the buttons, the tunes, the songs, the colors to make them big, and you would miss them. So after 12 weeks, the teams still keep on doing those things because they would miss them. It's fun to celebrate little progress every week, and it's important.
It is important. And it's also for folks who are very type A and driven, it gets pushed to the side. It's like, okay, what's the next thing that has to happen? So yeah. I think some of the best things I've learned from my clients are feed people, slow down, and celebrate. Well, I swear to God, and I remember facilitating this group. It's a big on-site thing, right? And I've got my schedule because they have outcomes, and my job is to help them get them. And this one gal says, "Oh no, we can't do lunch in 45 minutes." I'm thinking, really? She goes, "We need an hour and a half." I go, I'm freaking out about this. I'm going, okay, I'm not sure how that's going to work. And she goes, "Okay, you have to understand, food is our love, and we brought food to share with each other. It'll all be fine." And it was one of the best meetings I ever had. And I didn't speak the same language as everybody. I thought, okay, so I'm just going to get in with it. But I learned like that, because there was that space for them to celebrate and connect, everybody was on the same page and moved forward. And celebrating is a big deal.
And we think, yeah, but work happens when we are back in the room on the flip chart, right? Well, what if it happens while you are eating and sharing? And what if the cooking already was the work, right? And you were thinking about how spicy for her and for him, and that was already part of the work. So probably in those 90 minutes, there's a lot of work that happened there. It's just not on the flip chart.
And it was but it's the essence of the organization, right? It's the love and caring for one another that helps them deliver on what they're trying to do. Yeah. And especially when times are maybe more challenging or the work is harder, that part lays a fabric down around people that sustains.
And after those 90 minutes, you can take much quicker decisions, because their stuff that happened there was also part of bonding, of alignment, of clarifying, of committing.
And it goes back to what you said in the beginning. If you don't speak the language that your clients are speaking, it's a disconnect.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, drop the ego, girl. They're going to teach you something today. Just go with it. It was really, it impacted all my future meetings. And that was probably 15, 20 years ago that happened. But I still remember the feeling of it. And it was so powerful. Simon, I want to wrap this because I know you have an important event tonight with one of your kids. Yeah. Tell us about that.
So Federico is 8 years old, and he goes to sleep very, very early, like 8 p.m. He has to be in bed. But today is a special day because there is a soccer game, and he's allowed, not his other folks, only he is allowed to get out with Papa, and we go and watch this soccer game. So we are all excited.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to give you the final moments of the podcast to share something you want to leave our listeners with that you hope they will take into their day and into their work life.
Do less. How do you get to do less? Go to strategysprints.com, get the daily flow, use it for 2 days in a row, it takes 10 minutes. You write down how did you allocate your time, what will you delegate next. And if you do this 2 days in a row, you might find how to do less.
Thank you, Simon. And for everybody listening, I have all of Simon's links to some of his previous podcasts, his website, all of that will be in the show notes. So don't worry about it, but check it out. Simon, have a great time with Federico tonight. Celebrate, goal. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Sarah, for showing up for your community for many hundreds of episodes under all weather conditions, being of service to them. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You've been listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author, change agent, and strategic business coach, Sarah Box. You can grab the show notes and find out how to work with Sarah at sarahbox.com/No Labels, No Limits podcast. We'd love this podcast to reach as many people as possible. Please remember to rate, leave a 5-star review, and share the podcast with someone you think would get value from this conversation. Till next time, keep taking those daily action steps to align your purpose to your principles and achieve your goals in business and life.